Hello, everyone, and welcome to a surprise Sunday morning impromptu live stream. When your phone rings and you get a call from a man like Vitaly from Chilled Grow Lights, you pick up the phone and you answer. So I want to welcome Vitaly from Chilled Grow Lights. You guys have seen his lights on my channel. Vitaly, how you doing this morning?
Hey, hello.
So some of you guys probably saw Vitaly's video yesterday and the day before. Vitaly was the guy that made the air-cooled, water-cooled, ducted, active-cooled, basically whatever you wanted to do LED. I showed you guys that run. I put it kind of next to Canopy 10, and it hung. It hung in there. 650-watt light, produced 2 pounds of incredible product. So when Vitaly started showing everyone on YouTube that he's got a new generation 2 technology, a lot of people perked up and listened. So I put that video out on Instagram. I took a clip, Vitaly, of you submersing this new light product in a tub of water. What's up with that? Tell us a little bit about that real quick.
Well, so the modules, the way they're designed is to be waterproof. So that way, since it's a greenhouse type of environment, if somebody wants to spray whatever, either a foliar spray or just wipe down the fixtures, or if there's condensation or anything like that, it'll be able to handle that, or just hose them down, like when they get dirty, instead of having to worry. Because I know a lot of the DIY stuff, especially, is just like bare chips, right, with nothing covering it. And
it is, and we have to, when we're in there spraying, we have to be pretty careful not to get our cobs and our DIY. DIY is great. Obviously, I'm a DIY guy, but there are some sacrifices you make when you DIY.
Right.
So just to give you guys a little bit more backstory on Vitaly and Chill Grow Lights in general. Vitaly kind of came on the scene last year, 2016, fired up a YouTube channel and set up a basement as he was prototyping some LEDs. And rather than just keep all his intellectual property to himself and just come with a fixture, put a ribbon on it and a price tag, he offered his components to us that are inside his fixture, allowing guys like me and guys and girls like you to grab just the boards or just the drivers or whatever and utilize those in your own builds. Because we come from backgrounds with all different budgets. So a lot of times we look at the shiny new tech, but we just can't afford it. So you earned a lot of respect in my book, Vitaly, by just cracking open your fixture, cracking open your business and saying, yeah, sure, you want the parts? Like, who does that? Why? Just why? What's the catch? What's the catch? Are these lights going to like spray some kind of arsenic in my grow room? Like, is this some evil plan for world domination? Why would you do this?
Well, I've been a do-it-yourselfer since I was a young kid, and the project itself started as a do-it-yourself thing for my own personal reasons, like for growing, setting up my own garden. And so instead of buying, after trying a few lights from the market, I decided that I want to make my own. And so I started it started as a DIY project, so it made perfect sense to allow others who are doing it themselves to be able to do a similar thing, and maybe cut some of that development time down by being able to use some of the stuff that I've already put the effort into instead of starting from scratch. So that's basically the idea. No hidden agenda.
That's pretty cool, Vitaly. And your YouTube channel is not just about promoting you and promoting your lights and all that good stuff. You've got a lot of cool instructional videos, like how to mix and make your own hydroponic nutrients, which I think a lot of people got value out of that. There's the whole magic in a bottle thing. Like, you need this $50 bottle, and you show us here on your channel a few months back how to just make your own newts. And it ended up, holy crap, it ended up getting 121,000 views.
I was surprised. It's the most popular video on the channel, and I just made it, oh, by the way, kind of a thing, because I hate spending money when I don't need to, right? I'm kind of, like I said, I'm a do-it-yourselfer, right? So I want to cut costs as much as I can too. And it makes no sense to buy liquid nutrients already pre-mixed, because you're mostly paying for the water. So by doing your own, you can accomplish the same thing for a fraction of that cost. So basically, that's the idea of that video.
That's very cool. Well, Vitaly, we know you're busy, and so just thank you so much, man, for reaching out and saying, Grow Mouse, I choose you. I want to come talk to you about my new product. I think that's so cool, and it gets me hyped, and I'm honored and all that good stuff. And I think we have a lot more to learn from you in the future with all your crazy plumbing rigs and dosing systems and solenoids. And so I hope when things settle down, we'll get a little more back in your garden and see what's going on with food production and, feeding your family, from a crop in your basement and all that stuff. It's very cool.
Well, thank you. You were the very first person to, kind of notice me and spread the word over after I posted my stuff. And it makes sense that, we'd connect and, talk about this stuff. I think we have a lot in common, which is the DIY stuff.
I'm a huge nerd, so I don't know if this is how you say this, but I've heard some cooler kids say "real recognize real," man. I think that's what the kids are saying. Chat room, how you doing? We got chat full up, dude. We got Loki Grow in the house, Devil Dogs, Grow and Cali Dank, the Grow Green Show, Tommy Guns, THC Titan, McConaughey 840, Moosehead 905. Oh my gosh, the entire crew is here, Vitaly. We had 20, Dirtman Dan, we had 27 people hanging out in chat 2 hours before we were going to go live, just chilling. We got 250 people in the house, but don't let that make you nervous.
No, not at all.
It's just me and you, man. We're just having a friendly, light nerd discussion. So before we get into more about your product and more about the Gen 2 boards that are coming out of chilled grow lights, why don't we do a little talk about just general lighting and plants, because at the end of the day, whether you're growing succulents, microgreens, cannabis, organic food crops, whatever that is, if you're doing that indoors, you're going to need some light energy. You're going to need some air, some CO2, and some water, right?
Right.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So give me just a quick moment, and I'm going to do this little presentation here. Ready? And here we go. So guys, what we're going to do, Vitaly and I, we're just going to kind of lay down some basic, kind of high school level science for plant biology and comparing grow lights. So Vitaly, it's getting super confusing out here in the marketplace because I've got, HID #1. I've got the single-ended. I've got the double-ended. Now I've got a ceramic, and that comes in single-ended. It comes in double-ended. It comes in dual arc double-ended. I've got LEDs. I've got chip-on-board LEDs. I've got multi-chip on-board LEDs. I've got discretes. I got PCBs. I've got quantum boards. God, where do we start? Like, how do we compare these things? So we want to just get into some metrics, and I've been harping on this on my channel. I know. I've been harping on micromoles and stuff like that, but we need to get down to some kind of apples to apples analysis that we can compare all these different light sources, because at the end of the day, our plants don't care. All they want is light energy. They don't care what source it comes from. I mean, Vitaly, do plants see colors of light, or do they see energy states or photons? Like, what do you think?
Who knows? Obviously they don't have eyes, right? Just pigments that respond to various colors and produce various photosynthetic products depending on what that particular pigment is designed to do. So no, I mean, I think you're definitely on the right track. The worst thing that I think that people have been doing previously, and a lot of the lighting companies are to blame for this, is for speccing their lights in the wrong way, like lumens, for example, or lux, or that is designed for humans, right? And plants totally don't care for lumens. They care for the photosynthetically active radiation, which is, the number of photons in the specific range that plants can respond to, by growing. And, the metric for that is obviously is micromoles per joule per second, or joule or watt per second or joule, depending how you want to look at it. And that's basically it. And spectrum comes in, which is the PAR, what part of the lighting spectrum the plant is able to capture. Humans, believe it or not, are very similar to plants in the amount of the color spectrum that we can see. Plants fall a little bit outside of both of those, like a little bit into the UV and a little bit into the near infrared. But most humans and plants are about the same, which is 400 to 700 nanometers. Yeah. So I guess that's that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I mean, plants don't see lumens, but our hands are tied because a lot of manufacturers, LED and otherwise, give us lumen ratings. So we need some kind of data to talk about. So you'll even hear on my channel talking about lumen per watt because I don't have any other data. And a lot of manufacturers are really coming around, and I'm finding with you and with I'm not going to say a bunch of other names, but with other manufacturers of higher quality lighting products in general, people that have nothing to hide, they promote their par values, their micromole values. They don't hide behind lumens. Lumens is such a cop out, in my opinion. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I don't know why it started that way, but maybe because the number looks bigger, right? Because, like 25,000 lumens or whatever, obviously looks better than, 1,500 micromoles or something like that. But maybe that's where it started, or who knows? Who knows how it got started? But the point is a totally incorrect metric, and it does a disservice to people who are in the market for grow lights, because it's not an accurate measure of the light that plants use. So it's actually nice that some of the manufacturers are going in the correct direction, and hopefully that'll continue to happen more and more, which would only improve the industry, and the understanding of the consumers, or the growers, instead of being misled intentionally or otherwise in using the wrong metrics and making assumptions or being indoctrinated by statements that they've made in their marketing materials as true, which when they're not. So
could you imagine going shopping for a car, and on the sticker, it didn't give you gas mileage, it didn't give you anything, it just gave you top speed. Right. So no horsepower, right, no torque, no fuel efficiency. It says this one goes 180 miles per hour. It takes you 9 years to get there. But I mean, could you imagine? So right. Anyway, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we move on to what does matter to our plants? Because at the end of the day, we're growers. We grow biomass, we grow flowers, we grow trichomes, etc. So when we're talking about apples to apples comparison of grow lights, any grow light, it boils down to three categories in my mind, because I'm a consumer, right. And Vitaly, you've been a consumer in the past of grow lights, and I'm sure many other products. Light quantity, which is what Vitaly is talking about, and the metric for that is micromoles of photons per second, okay? And to a greater extent, micromoles per second per area. That's what ppfd is. How much light is over a space, the photon density. Light quality, the PAR range that Vitaly mentioned, 400 to 700 nanometers and beyond, because you can kind of publish a website with some trick numbers with a spectrum that's really tightly packed in the PAR range, right? Or you can look at another spectrum that's a little bit wider, 350 to 750 nanometers, and the numbers might not look quite as impressive because some of that light energy is outside the PAR range and thus is not measured. What do you think of that statement?
That's absolutely right. So I guess it depends on how the studies are laid out in the labs, if they use a lab, on how this, which part of the spectrum they're actually including in the efficacy, of their light. But in my opinion, and it's been proven in quite a few studies, including that old study that the Cree study.
Yeah,
exactly. They were using spectrum, up into the UV and into the near infrared, not just 400 to 700, in figuring out, the yield of per frequency. So it really just depends. I tend to lean towards something closer, like maybe 350, maybe 375 to 750, 775 as the like the photosynthetically active spectrum.
The true PAR range, right?
I think so, because there's processes that happen outside of the the old default of 400 to 700. It's not really as black and white as that, especially when you're talking about different species.
Sure. And it's a little bit of a sticky territory, because isn't that where we have the least data in terms of cannabis crops and ornamental crops? Is like, what does UVA do? What does UVB do? And what are the effects, morphogenic or photosynthetic or whatever, of near infrared light? So that's kind of where we get into a little bit of the pseudoscience, right? Or have you seen some studies that you're working off of in the UVA range?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of studies coming out. You know, they're not just. I guess each study kind of has its own goals in what it's trying to cover, but mostly they're trying to solve some kind of a problem. You know, and a lot of the studies that I've seen with UV happens to be in the greenhouse industry. You know, when they're growing things like tomatoes or bell peppers and things like that. And there's a problem that happens with greenhouse plants that does not happen as often under just direct sunlight growth, is intumescence, basically, where you get these strange expansions of cells, you know, that's filled with fluid to the point of deforming and sometimes even bursting those cells, which you know, lower the production rate and allow the plants to be more susceptible to diseases, right? Because now we have interior exposed cells for bacteria and funguses to start attacking the plants and stuff. So a lot of those studies have been focused on trying to figuring out what's lacking in greenhouse lighting that's not, you know, that's not, you know, that's available in normal sunlight that might be causing this. Okay. And you know, a lot of it has been UV, you know, like various parts of UV that are filtered out by the materials and the glazings that's used in the greenhouses that you know, block some of that UV light, that make some of those susceptible plants basically you know, show those effects of those issues, like the intumescence or edema, which is the incorrect term for that. It's a different disease. Anyway, and then on the infrared side, the information is it's out there, but it's a little bit less definitive at this point, you know, on how much the near infrared really does affect the plants, and whether or not it's even that worth it, you know. And they've been doing some weird things, like turning on infrared in the middle of the night, for example, and things like that, which is just interesting. But
well,
to the, you know, the average user, it's not that big of a deal, I don't think.
Right. I mean, when we get to that point where we're at that, we're such godly growers. We're growing at that 99th percentile. In that, when we kind of start to explore some of those weirder techniques, or you know what I mean? A lot of us are just having trouble keeping our temperature stable before.
Right. Yeah. So the law of diminishing returns, right? And that definitely falls in that category. You know, there's a lot bigger things that you can do now, much more easily, to increase or to solve some of your problems, whether it be yield or, you know, plant growth or diseases, than some of these more esoteric things that have not been fully, you know, proven to be as useful. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, just bringing it back into the context of this conversation, you know, I've got Vitaly here for all you guys that are joining us fresh live in chat. I see my mods, Wookie Kush working overtime, Urban Farmers in the house, Hankel89, Stink Bomb Inc., welcome, and Norwegian Frog joining us for this morning. So we're talking about apples to apples metrics for comparing any grow lights. We talked a little bit about the importance of light quantity and photon density, and we're going to go into that a little further here in a minute. Light quality, we just finished talking about. Vitaly was telling us some of the maybe benefits and merits of increasing that par range a little bit. 400 to 700 is pretty restrictive. Maybe 350 to 750 is what we should be talking about for photosynthesis and morphogenic effects, you know, increasing trikes, terpene profiles, etc. And last but not least, we've got cost. So just to pull this into a quantitative, you know, high school biology context, when we're talking about growing our plants indoors without the sun, we still adhere to this photosynthetic formula for all the, you know, 80% of the plants in the world are C3 plants, including our cannabis. And at the end of the day, photosynthesis in our grow room, in a greenhouse, outdoors is very quantitative. We're trying to make sugar. Well, ultimately, we're trying to grow buds. But in the process of making buds, we're trying to get the plants to make sugar. And to do that, you need X amount of things. You need 6 CO2s, you need 12 waters, and you need about 48 photons. So I can easily provide water in my garden. CO2 is free up to a point, and then we have to supplement. We'll talk a little bit about that. But light really is the thing I have the most or the least control of that's driving the entire reaction. Right, Vitaly? I mean, you're dedicating your whole life to this, providing light to plants, right?
No, absolutely. Light's definitely, but like you said, they're all important. And I would actually add a couple of more to this, is temperature and nutrients.
Okay.
Without those two additional things, we can't have photosynthesis at all. So, like for example, when it's plant's frozen, it doesn't matter how much light or water or carbon you have, it's not going to grow.
Good point.
Or nutrients. If you're just feeding water, it's not going to do anything, right? You need to have all those macro and micro elements in your nutrient solution in order for the plants to be able to have all the I guess the raw building blocks that they need in order to produce the various compounds that they produce for growth.
Sure. But in terms of grower control, I can easily manipulate my nutrients, whether I'm using your 120,000 view video and making my own cheap. If it's cheap, I can do it. I can control the strength and temperature. I'm indoors. So that's pretty easy for me to control. But lighting really, for me, has been a limiting resource based on just, dollars. And just light quantity in general has been a limiting resource. So that's why I dedicate my whole YouTube channel to it, because I feel like there's a lot of people in my situation that providing the correct amount of light in terms of quality and quantity is like an enigma, So
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. We're talking about light and light levels. So more photons equals more glucose equals more photosynthesis equals more bud, right? Well, it might not be that simple. So in the context of chilled LED and chilled GrowLight's new products, I always say chilled LED. It's like LED twice. It's like saying, never mind. Anyway, in the context of talking about chilled GrowLights and providing photons, I've got a little chart here, and this is a diminishing returns chart for light levels. So when it comes to lighting the indoor grow room, you buy a light, you hang it up, and you provide a fixed amount of photons, photon density. And for the most part, that's what controls your photosynthetic rate to a point. But you reach a point where you're providing too much light. So Vitaly, what would be like the pitfalls of sizing your light for a space and photosynthetic rate and all that good stuff? Like, how do we even determine what we want? Like, I'm on your website, I'm shopping around. Like, what wattage do I buy? Is wattage even a good metric? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about like selecting a grow light in general?
I think before you even get to that point, you have to first figure out what you want to get out of it and what you have to work with as far as your environment. Those things would be, what's my height of my room? Do I have additional CO2 available, or am I going to just run atmospheric CO2 from exterior, from outdoors? Do I have a lot of air conditioning capacity, and and things like that before determining what kind of light or how much light to get? Because like you're showing in this graph, there is a point of diminishing returns at atmospheric CO2 levels and normal grow room temperatures. Above a certain point, it'll just be wasted photons, basically, because the plants aren't going to produce any more, even if you give them more light. Just basically wasting your electricity and paying for lights that aren't doing their job.
Absolutely. You nailed it. And Chad is asking, yes, this graph is under ambient CO2 levels, approximately 350 ppm. Although if you're in a city, you may be getting 425 or maybe even more. And what this graph is showing in so many words is that under atmospheric CO2 levels, you reach a photon density of about 1,000, 1,100, maybe as high as 1,150. And the gains that you get from bumping up to that next, adding that extra 100 watts, adding that extra amount of photons, you're really just getting these hairline gains in photosynthetic rate because you've now become carbon limited. And I harp on this a lot. I talk about this a lot, but Vitaly, you actually brought up some other, really interesting things in relationships between temperature, CO2 as a function of light. So, when I go on a lot of GrowLight companies' website, I always appreciate when they have a little education section on how I select their lights. Now, obviously, I've got a little more than the average amount of knowledge, but when I go on a website and I'm trying to figure out how to select a light, I always appreciate when they tell me that I should select light A if I'm using ambient CO2, and I should select light B if I'm going to enrich with CO2. Can you sent me over these graphs, which come from studies from I don't know. I don't remember what university they were, UC Berkeley or Davis or something like that.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Fairly prestigious universities. So can you tell us a little bit about selecting like the right light for me? Let's say I'm a grower that just, doesn't have CO2. I have some ability to control my environment, but what should I be looking for, like in terms of what you talked about, temperature, CO2, et cetera?
Yeah, so in the temperature point, it really depends on like how much air conditioning capacity can you handle. Like if you want, like for example, if you're just running atmospheric CO2, running at a higher temperature may in fact hinder your growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So too high a temperature will tend to stunt growth just as much as too low of a temperature. So like there's an optimal kind of temperature range for the optimal, basically for each, level of light, there's an optimal temperature as shown in the blue graph,
mm-hmm.
right? So the higher the light intensity, the higher the temperature needs to be in order for you to be able to take advantage of that light in increasing your photosynthesis.
Okay.
And then if you're, same with the carbon, right? If you have the more light, if you don't have enough light, you don't really need extra CO2 because that's not your limiting factor. Your light might be, or your temperature might be. But if you're running like a normal grow room, say, at 75 degrees Fahrenheit or so with regular atmospheric CO2, you probably don't want to go up much more than maybe 850, 900, maybe 1,000 micromoles.
Okay.
Because like you said, if you go back to that previous graph that you had, the rate of diminishing returns starts going up quite a bit.
Okay.
If those bars were straight up all across the board, then obviously you would choose the highest ppfd you can muster because your rate's going to go up equally. But since the graph is kind of tapered, like you're showing, the 25, 50, 75%, right? Above a certain point, you're just increasing them. You're spending the same amount of money for energy, the same amount of money for your lights, but you're getting less result for that same input, and the only reason for that is because of those two other limiting factors, which is the carbon and the temperature. If you were able to increase those, then that's great. If not, then I'd stick around with something like maybe 900 micromoles, which most commercial growers do. I don't believe it's quite rare for any of them under artificial light to go above 900 micromoles, just due to those diminishing returns, and also the increase in expenditures for cooling. Since they're dumping the hot air into the room and they have to use the air conditioning to overcome that extra heat.
So just pulling this back into the big picture, I love doing these live because the chat, they always let me know when they're getting antsy. They're like, let's talk about chilled, let's talk about LEDs. So the reason we went into this whole baseline for 30 minutes is that selection of a lighting product is not an arbitrary process, and wattage is becoming more and more meaningless. I mean, obviously it's an effective tool to communicate, between two people. But wattage it's really not apples per apples. And even inside of wattage, like when people ask me or they ask you, should I get a 400-watt light, a 600? We just want to demonstrate that there's a lot more at play, and there are different levels that you can achieve with garden performance, but you have to take into consideration, am I supplementing with CO2 or not? That's number one. Number two, do I have the environmental controls to achieve a higher temperature for higher metabolism? And all these things will help you determine how many ppms you should run. People say, oh, I run 1500 ppm. Oh, really? I get better performance with 1600. But we really need that full picture. So without further ado, we're going to tie it in. We're going to talk about grow lights and LED grow lights. And we're going to talk about photon quantity and how much does it cost you to acquire the photons, not the watts. So quick reminder, a watt is just a rate. It's a joule per second, and that's how we're charged. Every joule we pull out of our wall per second, we get charged at a rate of 1,000 of those per hour. That's a kilowatt hour. So I have a little metric here. Okay, this is Vitaly. This is the average grower. Can't do every space, or chat will hang us up on a noose. But 4x4 space, pretty common space. We're running a 650 watt light of some product. And to me, it looks like it's a pretty good product, 2.2 micromoles per joule. In your estimation, that rate of efficacy, where does that sit with you, just generally speaking, in the market in 2017 for grow lights in general?
I think at this point, it's one of the top of the market right now. I don't think you'll be able to find a higher efficacy light out there.
Okay, gotcha. Now, another thing we have to talk about a little bit is system level versus board level, because a lot of times you'll see board level, which means the LEDs on the DC side are performing at a rate, but that isn't the whole picture, is it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the drivers obviously aren't 100% efficient. So you're going to add some inefficiencies in the drivers. And you're also going to have some kind of a secondary optic, whether it just be a protective lens, some kind of a reflector to redirect the light, or just or another lens to optically shape the light that you want it to fall to a certain angle. It's very rare that you would have the LED sitting bare, like a lot of DIYers are doing these days. But even then, they're using some kind of an optic, even if it's just like a white reflector, right, which causes bounce of the light and absorbs some of it, and each one of those bounces causes additional light loss. So that by the time all the light makes it out of the fixture, mm-hmm. and if you take that and you measure that compared to the watts you're pulling out of your plug, right, at the wall, that would be the true efficiency of your light. And that's going to be a much lower number than your board level efficiency is, which doesn't consider anything else other than the board itself, right? The amount of light, the input wattage into the LED board, and the amount of photons you're getting out of it, not considering anything else.
And Green Jeans is chiming in chat. Welcome to the show, Gene. He's saying optics are the key between the PPF, the total photons emitted by the source, and the PPFD that you're seeing on the canopy over the area that's actually growing plants. Would you agree?
I think so, to a point. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Like it may be the key to a specific, I guess to a specific degree. If you're one of the growers who has limited height, then optics will help you significantly in being able to more properly and evenly direct the light where you need it to go. But if you're a commercial grower that has unrestricted height and go up, then optics actually may hinder the performance of your light because of those things. Like I said, each bounce causes a loss, off of a reflective surface, and each time it has to go through a surface, it causes a loss. So when you're working at a higher area, that overlapping coverage from light to light, you don't really care too much about the evenness of coverage per light, because you're overlapping those coverages, right, from the higher distance, and that gives you even coverage, plus allows you to reach, so if you were, say, if this is your canopy and this is your light, and you're trying to cover this square footage that you're showing, the 4x4 space, by say a 2x2 light, you have to hang it, say, 2 feet high from the light or less, from the canopy or less, then you're only reaching the very tops of your canopy, right? Because you don't have those adjacent lights helping you hit some of that the adjacent canopy from
shared
the
light,
adjacent, exactly.
Light. Yeah, absolutely.
So when you go high, and you have, say, 2 lights and you got the canopy way lower, then because of the angles can be much broader, then you be able to hit, that canopy almost to the bottom, right? Depending on how dense, obviously, your planting is, but still, you're able to allow more leaves to be hit by photons than you would be able to at a lower distance. But of course, like I said, like we were saying in the beginning, it really depends on the space you have to work with, and that's why it's important to choose a light, or choose how you design your DIY light based on your environment and what you have to work with.
Well said. Well said. That's why when we look at all these Instagram posts of these 100 light gardens, they're hung up super high, because the entire canopy with all the shared adjacent light sources, it just becomes a massive 100-foot light, basically a giant photon blanket, right? So moving on, we wanted to leave this with some kind of metric. The goal here was just to give you guys some kind of metric for an apples to apples comparison. And so I want to go through this just really quickly. We got a 4x4 space that's 1.5 square meters. We got a 650 watt light at a really nice efficacy. We'll just assume system level. That's the amount of photons we're getting out when we're plugging it in. So we multiply our 650 by our 2.2, we get the total amount of micromoles of photons per second delivered out of the source now, okay? We take that, divide it by our area in meters, and we get a average ppfd, micromoles per second per meter squared. Now, this doesn't take into account any losses to optics or, hanging the light higher or whatever, but that's our average. And we take our total system cost, $1,500, which is about what people are paying for a 650 watt higher end product. We divide our costs by our micromoles delivered, and we come up with like $1 cost per photon. What do you think of that metric?
Right, that's exactly right. I think that's much better than using wattage. Wattage should be used to figure out what your energy bill is going to cost and what your AC requirements would be.
So aside from,
yeah, exactly. But aside from that, it shouldn't really be your primary consideration for what size light to get, what size powered light to get. And so instead of that, you definitely need to be looking at the efficacy of the light per watt, right? And so that way you can figure out how much total light you're going to have. So if that 650 watt light, if it was only producing an efficacy of 1 micromole, right, then you would need 2.2 of those lights to achieve that same 962 ppfd, right? So instead of that 650, it's more like 1,400 watts. And so the watts don't really matter all that much on their own. You need to have that second factor.
So what we're saying here, and we're seconds from jumping into actually talking about the new tech, which I feel like I might have you know, when they put a picture of a hot chick in the thumbnail and you're like, oh, sweet, I'm going to click this video. Or what do they call it? Clickbait. I feel like it clickbaited people, but they're being patient. We got 400 people in the room. Urban Farmer's still in the house. Dung Beetle's in chat, regulating. So is Malik Spider. SoCal, he was on the stream yesterday. He's hanging out. Mr. Stinkbomb and Wookie and THC Titan Purple Haze. What up? Triple OG. So when you guys out there, I'm talking to you, listener land, when you guys are out there comparing lights, wattage is important in a context because it, you know, it helps you size your circuits and all that good stuff. But when you're comparing some grow lights, it might not be a bad idea to calculate how much you're paying per photon. Because if we go back up to this graph right here, or this formula right here, our plants see photons. They don't see watts. They don't see lumens. They see photons, and it takes 48 of them to make a glucose. And a glucose is what makes our biomass, our buds, our leaves, all that good stuff. So you guys take a look at this metric, maybe use this metric. Maybe we can all start getting on the same page here, you know? And so when you see that 200 watt eBay light, maybe that thing isn't quite as attractive per, you know, dollar per micromole as you might think. So we're out of screen share mode. Hi, I'm back with you. I'm going to kick it over to Vitaly. Vitaly, do you have any toys or any things that you can show us? I know you showed them on the video, but let's talk about what can I buy? What can I hang in my room? Let's talk about LEDs.
Well, I don't really have anything for sale right now.
Okay, but for the future, so I can tell Santa. Do you have a board on you?
What?
Do you have a board on you?
I can grab one. Yeah, sure. 1 second.
Yeah, go grab a board and a heat sink, and I'm going to catch up with Chad. I got a couple questions that came in here. Chad, thank you so much for hanging out there and doing this little thing. I know we had to kind of jump on this baby. You know, Vitaly's schedule is really, really tight, and he emailed me last night at like 1 a.m. and was like, hey, if you want me to come on and talk, I've got between this window and this window on Sunday. So normally I would never stream on Sundays, but you know, we had to get it in where we could fit it in. And I'm just so excited. I think one commenter on Instagram, when I posted your little preview there, Vitaly, I took a screenshot of your YouTube. I posted on Instagram. One commenter said, I'm going to have to contact a doctor if this doesn't go down within 4 hours. And I kind of felt the same way. So what do you got for us, man?
Well, you know, I guess in my old or the original design that we had, right, the first generation, that's a quite old design. I started working on that, you know, probably close to 7 years ago now. And it took forever to get anywhere with it. Well, anywhere with it, I mean, you know, go through all the process and all the hoops and since I have to, you know, pay everything. I don't have any investors, you know, to help me out. I'm, like I said, like I was just a DIYer doing this for my own personal reasons. And as it became clear as I was developing it that perhaps maybe others may benefit, I started kind of doing extra work that costs more, you know, like the patenting stuff and then developing things that actually would look good instead of just be usable. So that way you can develop, you know, like a commercial product. But anyways, all that time, you know, all that took a long time just because I had limited resources. And I had to, you know, as I got paid, I would do more stuff and so forth. So, but anyway, it still turned out to be a great product, and I was pushing out like 1.7 micromoles a joule, even back then, which is nothing to laugh at. And
no, it's very respectable. I mean,
yeah,
1.7 is good. I mean, just
HPSs do that right now, still, right?
Sure. Yeah. And you know, a lot of guys are getting 2 per light. You know, in a home 1 light setting. A lot of guys with all that shared light from contributing sources are getting 3 a light. You know, that's with 1150 watts or whatever. I pulled 2 pounds with your 650 watt light,
right,
at 1.7 micromoles per joule. So that kind of, I was a little bit of a light snob before. I was like, I ain't touching anything under 2 micromoles per joule, man. Like, don't even. But and then, you know, you gave a bunch of us a discount on the prototypes, which ended up costing you money to sell. I think, would you sell a half a dozen of them to different people or something?
Yeah. A total of 6 lights. Mm-hmm.
So 2 per light for 650. Like, I'm happy. I slept great that night.
Yeah, believe it or not, those cost me somewhere around $5,000 or so to build, just
I
because it's
believe it.
prototype quantities.
Sure.
So yeah. Anyway, but I learned a lot, from going that route, and figured out that it may not be as like as efficient as far as production. Like if I was to build these for production, to have them be so modular, right? Because you have to put together these little tiny heat sinks, and connect them all and all that kind of stuff. And you have all these lenses to work with and way more wiring. And they're not as configurable, like reconfigurable afterwards. And, so since then, also new types of LEDs came on the market, that were more efficient. And it would make sense to take advantage of that to a higher degree. So I decided to increase everything instead of having those modular heat sinks where they would just be. Here, 1 second. I'm going to grab another one.
Yeah, I remember that, and I like the design. I still think it's a great design, but I'm just thinking in terms of if I was an employee.
So with the original, what's that?
Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah.
If I was an employee of yours, I would not want to assemble the old light all day. It just seemed like a lot of parts.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but that's okay. It's a labor of love. And I wouldn't mind to continue doing it, and paying an employee to do that either. It's just that in the end, I think it would serve a customer better with what we've came out now than what we had before. So originally we had these smaller modules, right? That we had a cover which also has LEDs on it. The PCB underneath it, and the heatsink, right? And that would be an individual component that you would place in an arrangement in your light fixture. And it took quite a few of those to get any kind of light intensity or wattage, just because of how small they were. Sure. So instead of that, like on the new one, we got these big giant ones, right, that go the full length of the light, and then there's the half-size ones for people who want a smaller light, or don't need such a. But still, it's way easier to mount one of these than 6 of these. Sure. In a row and connect them all up. Plus, because of the limitations, like even though the heatsink's pretty big, the actual area where you can actually attach LED chips is relatively small. So it made sense.
So you pivoted. You had a product. It was manufactured. You had all your injection molds ready to go. You had all your PCBs designed. You had your wire harnesses ready to go, and you decided to pivot.
Yeah. So I just skipped that stage, even though I still have a ton of that product left. I don't feel like I would be doing a service to the consumer by selling something that, in my heart, I feel is no longer as good as it gets, right? From what I'm capable of at this point, right?
Okay.
So,
but hey, wait, let me stop you. There's guys on a budget, and 1.7 to them with the performance I showed and proved in my own grow room. I mean, hey, it's just me and you. There's only 400 people. Would there be a clearance sale at some point down the future?
Possibly. I still got reels and reels of these chips. They're great chips, especially if you drive them at a lower wattage. Then you can increase that above 2 micromoles of joule just as well. It's just way more work to put together. And if they don't mind it, sure, that's fine. Okay. I don't know. I got like probably close to 1,000 of these heat sinks still sitting in the garage. So
okay, I signed up on your website like months ago for your email list, and it's not annoying or anything. I get an email, like every once in a while, once a month or something like that. So if I was on that email list, would I get notified if you were going to like do a fire sale of the old stuff? Because I'd honestly, dude, sure, I'd pick some up. Like those heat sinks alone, I could slap a cob on that, put a little copper tubing, and do a water-cooled cob rig. I mean, there's value to that stuff, even if I didn't want the boards.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things about these, and I kind of continued the same thing. I don't know if you can tell, but there's these two grooves, like just with those, so you can water cool those. But anyway, with the new design, it's a lot less work because you just slap on one heatsink and 2 PCBs, right? And you got a third of the light done. If you want a 1,200 watt light or a 600 watt light, depending on the wattage of the boards that you use, And I don't know if you can tell the count of the number of the LED chips themselves.
It's very dense.
Went up quite a bit. So this board has 446 LEDs.
446?
Yes. So just 384 of the whites, 36 dark reds, 8 reds, 14 royal blues, and 4 UVs.
Okay, I want to repeat. Okay, I want you to say it again, and I'm going to repeat it after you, like a sing along. So, how many whites?
384.
384 whites. Okay, how many reds?
We got dark reds, 36 dark reds.
So that's like
that's
a 660?
The 660, yeah.
Okay, 36 of those.
And then 8 of the 640 or 635.
Okay,
reds.
like Primo, McCree, Photosynthetic Peak, 630, 640, Amber Red, kind of just true red.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
and
cool.
then 14 royal blues.
14 royal blues.
445s, 450s.
Okay.
And UVs, 4 of those, but they they're and those are like the 390 nanometer. So
okay, so they're kind of like actinic / edge of UVA, correct? Like
yeah,
right
it's right in the border of visible in the beginning of UVA. And the reason for that is because of the studies that I've seen and the tests that I've done myself in the basement, and the covers that you have to use or that you should be using over the LEDs to protect them, right? The materials that are available, most of them are not very good transmitters of UV. And even if they are, they tend to lose their transmittance over time. Like, for example, polycarbonate goes yellow.
A lot of UV, and
it
turns yellow.
Yeah, it turns yellow and it becomes opaque. So you definitely don't want to use polycarbonate. You can use glass, and that does not go down over time as far as its transmission. But it's heavy and it's expensive and hard to form for anything other than just a plain piece of glass to stick over your stuff. And then so acrylic is kind of, or PMMA is kind of the only material left that passes UV while not going yellow or discoloring. But it does tend to roll off the deeper in the UV you go. Okay. And from the studies that I've seen and the tests that I've done, going much further in UV does not really produce any more of a result that we're looking for. Okay. And going further in UV, all it does is it diminish the efficiency or the efficacy per chip or per tube, right, that you're using. And any kind of cover above that you have will really significantly start cutting that out.
Potentially. I mean, what we have to be very clear on is that we're referencing studies that may or may not be with cannabis plants specifically. And Vitaly, I'm trying to save you from this conversation, because UV is one of those topics that we could just go down a spiral. So what I think we should do is we say there's some merits to the higher UV spectrum, and maybe we'll do another discussion on UV and infrared with some white paper, like silver bullet.
No, I agree with you. There's always people, that's perfectly fine. What I'm saying is that this is my own personal opinion, and from my own studying and tests that I've done, I've selected what I've selected. And if you don't agree with that, that's perfectly okay.
By the light.
Then you just use something else, that you feel is better for you. If it's deep UVB that you want, by all means, you're welcome to do that. That's the beauty of DIY is, you get to choose what you put into your light. So, yeah.
Love it. Perfect. I wasn't trying to contradict you there or anything. It could get crazy. Chat could break.
I understand.
Chat could break. So moving forward, okay, so you've got a new board and it's done with the development phase essentially. Are you pretty set on the diodes and bins and all that good stuff?
Yeah, everything's actually not just on order. Most of it is already on hand or on the way to my, to this location.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of getting all the stuff here and starting to put stuff together to sell.
Okay.
or
And
for you
can you
guys.
just briefly talk about your optic? Because I know you're very proud of it, and it's an optic that um, is quite different than what a lot of other people are doing.
Yeah. So
If you don't have one, it's cool. I mean,
no,
it's
I
covered in the
do.
video. Yeah.
So in the old design, I was kind of going with the lower hanging height kind of application, and that's the idea of the LED secondary lenses, right? The little bubbles you see over this, which has the, which basically focuses the light a bit narrower. So that way, if you spread these out at the proper distance, you're able to cover an area more evenly. And so that was kind of the idea behind that design. With the new one, I decided to not have a secondary optic in the sense that shapes the light, like the degrees, that are emitted, the light's emitted out of the light, out of the chips. And all it is doing is serving as a protective layer between the chips and the environment.
Gotcha.
So that's the point of that. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Vitaly, I think we've been going about an hour now, or I don't know, maybe a little longer. Where's my little time clock? I don't know. Can we, I know we have so much to cover, but I think what the audience in the chat would be most interested in is, how can I get them? How much do they cost?
Yeah. So the costs, you can go to the website and look at all the products. The prices are there now, and most of the photos are up. But unfortunately, the details, they're still missing, and I'm going to be posting them as time allows. Like the various forward voltages at different currents and other things like that, right? And dimensions, like the actual dimensions of the PC of the LEDs, excuse me, the heat sinks and the modules are posted. So if you want to start designing a light, you can download, click on one of the heat sinks and download the PDFs and print that off, and that gives you the exact dimensions of all the hole placements, the size of the thing, and all that kind of stuff, so that way you can start kind of messing around with layouts and things.
That's kind of what I was thinking about doing, Vitaly. I was thinking,
Yeah,
like,
scroll
okay,
down. That's down further below.
Well, you got a $29 heat sink here, and it looks like it's like lapped, like surfaced or something. Like it's
So
not
yeah,
just
the
an
bottom of it,
extruded
it's
thing.
here's my screen. It's not obviously a mirror finish, but it absolutely, yeah, it's polished. And the idea is that because of the power density, like in the little PCB like this,
Sure,
we're
it's got to lay
packing
flat.
180 watts, right? Not including the driver losses. So just 180 watts pulled by this. And then, so it has to be able to pass that extra waste heat into the heatsink. So obviously need some thermal compound, and the less the surface irregularities on the heatsink will, allow us to have less of a thickness for the thermal compound.
Okay.
And, better transmission of heat.
When I used to use extruded heat sinks that looked like that I got from online suppliers, it was just a straight extrusion. So sometimes when I saw it, it had like a cupping or a bowing, which wasn't a big deal for cobs because they're like 50 millimeters or 2 inches. But you've got, I mean, yours looks like it's lapped, it's machined, it's pretty much perfectly flat within a few thousandths of an inch or something.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
based on what I'm seeing.
Right. So with these, the extrusion process, they pull these in like maybe 20-foot long sections, and they stretch them and they condition them, but they're still warped, and you can't get everything exactly flat. So the bottom surface, since this is their mounting surface, they put this down in the mill, and they mill this flat, and then put in all the holes and all that kind of stuff. And after that, they come through and polish it. So this bottom surface is finished, unlike like a raw extrusion. And I know exactly what you're talking about, especially some of the wider ones. They tend to have a bow to it. And the reason for that is, as it cools, since it has fins, right? The part that has fins cools at a different rate, and it shrinks, because every material has a thermal expansion. Basically, it expands with heat. So as it cools after the extrusion process, it cools at a different rate in the different parts, and that causes the warping that you're talking about.
Okay. Reservoir Scruggs is asking about drivers, and I will get to drivers in a second. How long is that heatsink, the double that you got there?
Oh gosh, the dimensions are right on the site. So if you click on
okay.
that, that'll tell you precisely down to 1/1000th of an inch.
Okay.
So this
Let's
is a
go down
single.
here.
Go
Okay,
to
so
the
here's
double one.
this. Go to the double. Okay, let me go back to the double. So the double's running $55 base price. And it looks like, and it's cool because I was thinking, Vitaly, I was thinking I could just transfer some of these dimensions into my CAD program, and I could start designing today. That gives me a month to build a frame for when I'm ready. So it's 21.409 inches, so just shy of 2 feet. And I'm just looking at, we're buddies, so I can check your price. Let's see how that compares to just a raw. So the base price of a heat sink, that I could get, on a website, it's about 36 bucks. And so you're charging 55 bucks for, all the machining, the ability to accept water cooled with the grooves, which is pretty unique. And then obviously the lapping, which is of fundamental importance if you're using a large PCB. So I think you're pretty on target here. I think it's a very fair price.
So I think that the biggest benefit to a DIYer for getting off the shelf heatsink versus one of these is all the tapping that's going to be saved. Right?
Don't even say tapping. I don't tap anymore because I don't have to. Everything's in kit format. I don't tap.
Right. So this is, obviously, so you would prefer this as a kit than, but if you were to buy one of those heat sinks like you showed, that's doesn't have any holes punched in, but I haven't counted, but I could, the number of holes that we have in this thing. But if you talk for a minute here, I'll actually count this out.
Hell, I can count it myself. So we got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 on the base of the heat sink, not counting the ones on the sides. And then the optics have 12, 13, 14.
No, you're looking at the wrong view. This is the cover view.
Oh, okay. Well, assuming I did want to, I mean, we're talking 50 or 60 holes that would have to be drilled or tapped to accommodate everything.
Exactly. Plus the holes on the sides for when you're mounting this into your fixture.
No, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
No, not at all. Yeah, I'm just saying I've done this myself. Like when I prototype these, before I send out an order to have them machined and stuff, I had to manually do all the tapping.
It sucks.
And it's a pain in the butt. Like a heatsink like this with this many holes would definitely take a couple of hours to do, and a few broken taps. That's for sure because of the size of the holes. Plus, one thing, because this is waterproof, the majority of these holes are blind. What that means is they don't go all the way through the heatsink. So
cool.
If you look on this side, you see a ton of holes, especially down in the middle. On this side, you see a lot fewer holes.
I see.
So they're blind, meaning that they're only drilled to a certain point and tapped to a certain point, not all the way through. Because if they were tapped all the way through, then it doesn't matter what kind of O-rings I use on the cover. The water can still go through those holes, even through the screw threads once you screw them in. So that makes it even more difficult to tap, because blind taps have, for hand tapping, doesn't have any area for all your shavings, from the tap to go. So you break those more readily.
I think that's awesome. And the blind holes is great. You keep the dust, the bugs, the oil, the water, all that crap out. So Vitaly, I'm a new DIY LED guy, and I'm just trying to make it as simple as I can. And it looks like you have a pre-assembled kit here that has the board already mounted on the DIY board mounted on the heatsink with the cover over the top, and that's available in a 90 or a 180 watt configuration. But there's no price change here. Can you?
Yeah, it does. It's on the bottom by the pre-order. No, go back up.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So the price on top, it tells you what the lowest price is, and then once you upgrade, it gets the price by the pre-order now button.
Okay, so this 149, that's with a heatsink and a board and a cover, and then I supply my own driver basically.
Right. So, yeah. So,
Okay.
and then there's no difference. If you were to buy these independently as separate parts or as a pre-assembled kit, the price the same. So I would recommend you guys do that, since we'll be the ones who apply the thermal compound.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, that's quite messy,
Sure.
because, like unlike cobs that you're used to, you can use a dry thermal interface material, like a carbon-based or like some kind of silicone uh, sheet, right?
Yeah.
That you would attach, and the pressure that you can apply on the little cob is sufficient enough to create a really nice even contact across that cob with the heatsink. When you're talking about a big board like this, is even though that we have quite a few screws in here, you cannot use a dry TIM, a thermal interface material, because there's not enough pressure that would be generated to be able to create good contact. So you need a thermal compound, some like a paste or a grease, so
Sure.
that way it's able to flow even if you only have like 1 psi of pressure across it.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
It looks like you also have a controller. So, okay, so you talked about the board. You said we've got a lot of white, we've got a lot of red, we've got blue, we've got UV. And for the DIY guys, can we just plug this spectrum in? And is this a good flowering spectrum without a controller or any adjustability?
Absolutely. So the way this is designed, it's got more than enough blue and more than enough red to be able to be used full cycle, flowering and veg.
Okay.
With veg, you're not going to get the stretch that you would normally get if it was just a flowering spectrum. But at the same time, you're not losing anything by using it as a flowering spectrum. Like the way I designed it, it's optimized for flowering, but works very well for veg. Obviously, you would want to use less light total during veg,
Sure.
but yeah, without any control at all, without messing around with the spectrum, if you just plugged it all in, so that way all the channels are lit up, you do great with both.
But I'm starting to get into like light recipes and being able see, I spent the first, year and a half of this DIY thing just trying to arrive at the correct quantity of light for my space in my situation, right? We talked about environmental controls, just pulling it back to the beginning of the conversation. I have the ability to run CO2. Sometimes of the year I don't. So I've spent the last year just researching that. And just now I'm getting into light recipes and manipulating my spectrum. So what is this? This is a $149 controller. I just spent $200 on the stupid Bluefish, and it's very limited in what it can do. In fact, I kind of hate it. What can this thing do for me?
So this is the same controller that would be going into our advanced lights, the ones that are networkable.
Okay.
And it allows you to control any light module, whether it's ours or someone else's, including cobs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I don't have to buy your boards and all that stuff. I can just use my own cob setup and use this thing?
Yeah, or even the lights you guys already have built, and you want to have more control over the spectrum, or if you have colors, right? I mean, obviously, if all you have is white cobs, you can't
Well,
control the spectrum. All you can do is dim, right?
save
But if you
yourself $140 and get a $3 dimming knob, right? If you just
exactly,
okay,
right. So, but if you have if you're building a light that has the ability to have more than one channel of color, then that would make great sense, along with the external controller that you just flashed by on the other page somewhere there. Anyway, so click on that. So that external controller on the right-hand side pairs with the board you see on the left.
Okay.
You're going too fast. Go back one.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the controller I had.
No, that's the controller, and this is the board itself, and then it mates with the controller that you actually have the buttons on, right?
Okay, gotcha.
And then you're able to chain link 256 of the boards or lights with the one controller. So create a network of all your lights.
Very cool.
including the timing, so you can program it to go on a certain time, turn off at a certain time, have the sunrise, sunset, and white only mode if it's a blurple spectrum, like you call it. or
Blurple.
anything else like that, you know. And the new controller has some functions that did not exist in the old controller. And you know, I'll do a write-up about all those down, you know, a little bit later once I have some time.
So the
But
takeaway here is, it seems to me that like you do have a controller option. It sounds like it's going to be a necessity for commercial and for greenhouses, optional for guys like me that just have a light or a couple lights maybe. It sounds to me like if I'm stretching my budget to get into this technology, I could maybe omit the controller, and I can trust that your spectral blend is adequate, correct, good, right?
yeah, so
Okay.
so the only time that you ever want to have the advanced control functionality is if you don't want to have an external timer to turn your lights on and off.
Mhm.
That's one. And two is if you accidentally or purposefully overbought your LED, meaning oversized the lights, and you're turning and you realize that you're burning your plants and you need to dim them, right? So
Yeah.
you would need to be able to either raise the height or dim them in order to lower the light level. And three is to control the spectrum, which you may or may not want to do. But besides that, yeah, if you just buy the light, no controller, and you size it right, it'll flower perfectly fine without needing to mess around with the spectrum at all.
Okay. So it looks like, I mean, and you've been developing this thing for well over a year, right? So you're not trying to step on anybody else's toes that are out in the market, you know, doing similar things.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. You saw the lab report from November for these things,
Right.
you know, so
So
yeah,
they've been in
absolutely.
the lab for a minute. They've been in development, and you know, I think you're just, you know, just for me, like, you know, because I like to build grow lights, as you know. I'm looking at the wattage, which I shouldn't be, but you got it. You know, that's the language we speak. We don't have efficacy because you're doing your due diligence with your lab reports, right? Final binning.
We have the efficacy on the bare board. So if you buy the bare board and you want to know what the bare board efficacy is, that data sheet is in the lab report section at the top of the page.
Okay, lab report, education lab
No,
report
no,
section.
it's a little
Oh, you got a
further.
full
There you
tab.
go.
Okay, so
You
we're
just scroll
using
down to the bottom.
integrating sphere here up in your home
And the
base.
first link right there, that's Gen 2.
Gen
And
2.
that gives you the
Okay.
results.
Should I get a towel to put under my computer chair? Am I going to be excited, or
Well,
where
I
are
don't
we at
know.
here? Okay,
Depends how much
so
this excites you. Look at the bottom. I highlighted just so it's
oh,
easier for
okay.
people to see. So
So
the way
explain these
that,
numbers.
yeah, so the way that we had to test this, unfortunately, we had some constraints because of the size of the board. It's bigger than 6 inches, and their sphere, you know, the port that you can attach your device under test from the exterior of the sphere, is only 6 inches, right? So it wouldn't fit into that orifice for us to be able to test.
Sure.
So we had to go to the other kind of sphere, which is a larger sphere that you split in half and
Oh,
you
the
can
real
walk into.
expensive clamshell
Really
ones.
big. Yeah, exactly. So they're like huge ones, you know. I think I have a picture up somewhere where the guy standing inside of it, hanging my module in there. But anyway, so we had to go to that size, and in order for us to do it, the way integrating spheres work is if you are, let's say, what can I use an example? Yeah, I'll use this plate. All right, so we got the sphere, and this is, let's assume this is the board you're testing. So if you attach the board from the exterior of the sphere to the port, it'll be accurate because it allows the light to bounce all around, and the sensor, you know, next to your port is able to capture all the light and integrate it properly, right? But if you were to take this module and it's just one-sided, right,
Sure.
and place it in the center of the sphere, what's happening? You're shading
Well,
the second half of the sphere,
right.
right? So whenever you put your device under test inside the sphere, it's ultimately designed as a omnidirectional testing setup. So your light source pretty much has to be able to output in every direction
Like a
in
halide
order for it
bulb
to
or
be accurate.
HPS or something.
Yeah, or like
Yeah.
just incandescent light bulb, right? You know, that's
Sure.
what that's designed for. So because of that limitation, we couldn't go with the exterior mounting style, I had to go to the larger sphere. And since the boards are not omnidirectional, obviously, I had to create I guess I can grab it real quick.
Okay, but I mean, it sounds like I don't know what he's driving at, but I don't know if these numbers are you expecting that these numbers skewed high or skewed low? And that's why you're not like promoting this, because you're
no, they're not
trying to get the
in
final
any
numbers.
direction at all. They're
Okay.
within a couple of percent at most.
Okay.
You know, they're
Gotcha.
all basically the way these work. If you scroll, I think, I don't know, up or down. I think up.
Okay.
Keep scrolling until you see the graphic. There you go. Stop right there.
Yep.
So it shows you the yellow bulb in the center. That's my
Sure.
device under test.
Okay.
So the thing on the left, that's the detector, you know, which
Okay.
is the measurement instrument, and the thing on the right is a reference lamp, right? So before they do the start to test, what they do is they turn on the reference lamp, let it stabilize, however long it takes, usually about 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
And that reference lamp is NIST calibrated. So it's basically a precisely calibrated lamp and that they measure first, in case there's dust that fell inside of the sphere, in case my light that's already hanging inside but not on, absorbing some of that light, right?
Okay, so they can extrapolate out that.
Exactly. So that reference light is turned on first to recalibrate the sphere with my device in there and the temperature and the conditions and the humidity that happens to be present during that time. So once that's done, then they turn on my lamp, wait until it stabilizes. It's not a flash test.
Okay,
It usually takes like half an hour or so until they wait until everything stabilizes. And
you
they
hear that,
notice,
guys? This is running like it would run in your grow room. Stable
exactly,
operating temperature.
yeah.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that.
So this test, the results are very, very accurate. In fact, on the bottom, it tells you, the very, very bottom of this thing, it tells you all the equipment. I believe it even lists the serial numbers. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And
Wow.
And when they got the I don't know if it shows the actual reference. Let's see if it does.
Okay, so we got a 60-inch sphere calibrated, but Chad is just chomping at the bit. I mean, this says 2.87 for one driver, 2.7.
So let me explain. Yeah, so that's the part I wanted to explain.
Is this board level, or what is this?
This is board level. Yeah, exactly. It does not consider the driver inefficiency. And remember, this got tested in November. So the white chips that I'm using, they are the Samsung L560, whatever they are, I forgot.
LM561C?
Yes, and it's the S5 bin, right? So it's not the newest bin. This is back from November.
This data is S5.
Yes.
Okay.
So the current ones, the ones that I'll actually be selling to you guys, will have the S6 chips, which I already have, just don't have the rest of the colors in order to make the boards yet. So it'll be even higher, you know, so the one on the left would be more like a 3, and the one on the right would be more like a 2.8 something.
I just
and one on the left
soiled
would be like
myself.
around 3 or
I'm
so.
I'm so glad I'm screen sharing. I think I just soiled myself. I think you just said 3 micromoles per joule board level.
Right, but let me put that a little bit in context, because it doesn't show you the drive current, at least not in the easy way to figure out. So like I was saying, when you're doing a measurement that requires an omnidirectional source inside the sphere, you cannot use just one of these. Otherwise, it's going to be very inaccurate, since it's shading half the sphere, right? So what I had to do is rig up this little lantern that has 4 of these modules mounted on 4 sides.
I want one. Take my money. That's freaking awesome. I want to stick that in my walkway.
It's got the fan on the bottom, and all it is 4 of my normal heat sinks cut at 45-degree angles on my, a table saw, and epoxied together to come up with this. But anyway, and this now creates an omnidirectional source, right?
Sure.
The problem is the total wattage of this thing is beyond anything that they had at the lab as a reference, or basically the power supplies that they had, right? They didn't have anything to be able to power this thing. So I actually had to bring in my own drivers to be able to, sufficiently power this thing. And that's why it says one driver, two drivers.
Okay.
So the one driver basically would mean that this thing is being powered at 350 milliamps, right?
Okay. One driver, three. Okay, that makes sense. You drive anything at 350 milliamps, it looks awesome on a spreadsheet.
Right, exactly. So that's the one on the left with the one driver is 350 milliamps. The one on the right is 700 milliamps.
Okay, but to be fair, if I was a crazy guy that wore a green mouse head on the internet and I had the money and I wanted to spend, I could drive these things at 350 milliamps and get close to 3 micromoles with the new S6 bin.
You could, but at a high cost, because if you look at it, the difference between the currents is only what? 0.17 micromoles, right?
Yeah,
so
it's a small gain. It's really.
But if you look at it in percentages, I believe it's something like 5% or so, right? You can do the math real quick while I'm talking here. So anyway, so that's what the lantern for.
6% gain, so twice the.
So 6%. So you're gonna so it's gonna cost you 200% in order to get the same wattage you originally wanted, or the same number of ppfd or micromoles per area.
Yeah, but I want to get a bumper sticker on the back of my car that says 3 micromoles per joule.
You could if you wanted to, right? But the point is that for 6% gain, you have to lose 200% cost.
Right. Okay.
It's for DIYers who are what the biggest restriction is cost.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense in my mind.
Okay, but we can still get an industry-leading 2.7 board level with the S5 bin. Who knows what it's going to be with the S6? If we were to extrapolate,
I can tell you what it'll be with the S6.
Okay.
Let me see. Find it here real quick.
I can't believe you're releasing this information live on here. Am I peer pressure?
No, it's fine. I don't have any secrets. So 2.8 micromoles at 700 milliamps with the S6 bin. Believe it or not, the white chips, although they are the world's most efficient LED chip, and this is, by the way, the 3000 Kelvin version. Okay. So if even though they're the world's most efficient chips, as far and at this price point, in fact, I think at any price point at this point, but they don't add the as much efficiency as do the reds, right?
Okay, right.
Because what makes white is all the colors, and if you look at even the 3000 Kelvin data sheet result, its spike is in the around 600, and it goes a little bit past that and starts tapering off, right? And as you know, you get extra photons when you go deeper in the reds, right? So the reds themselves that I have on here provide a higher percentage of the efficiency boost than do the whites.
Okay, gotcha.
So I just want to make that clear. So going from an S5, as an overall system efficiency, which is only I think a little bit over a third of the total wattage, right? That this, actually, let me see, 1/3. No, it's about, about 27% of the total wattage is what the whites consume on this board.
Okay.
And going from an S5 to an S6 only boosts 0.1 micromole per joule, right? So if you're going from a 0.27 to a 0.28, right? So it's not as exciting as it may sound on paper.
I'm still excited. I need to butt in on you here because everybody is saying forward voltage.
I can tell you that, but this is based on the I guess I can tell you it's based on this current one I have. Nothing's changing about it, but there is going to be some variance due to the bins. Obviously, S5 bin is going to be all S5, but the way that Samsung supplies their chips, you don't get to choose a particular voltage, right? Right. You choose the S5 bin, whether you want a quarter bin or a kit bin, but what that means is there's two voltage bins, I believe, and you get to a mix of both,
Okay.
So, but fortunately, they're so near each other that it doesn't really matter what you get. They drive very evenly and very closely together, even when you're paralleling them, and don't add that all that much in extra inefficiency, even if you get the slightly
Higher voltage. Like
yeah,
I believe it's
exactly.
A1 and Z1 bin inside of a binception. It's a
Yeah,
double
so
bin.
all of mine are quarter bins, meaning that
Okay.
you only get the center, the best four center bins out of all of the possible bins.
Okay.
So all the ones are quarter binned and at the six if it, flux bin. Anyway,
Okay.
so as far as forward voltages, I guess at 700 milliamps, and you can extrapolate this, by the way, from this data sheet, but makes it easier, I guess, if you just spoon feed it.
Okay.
Total at 700 milliamps, which would be the same equivalent as the two driver,
Okay.
is, let me see, where is this here? Okay, so we got 160.2 volts at the 700 milliamp drive current.
Okay. So in a Meanwell HLG 240 will run two of these with a little bit of voltage to spare, basically.
Yeah, so that's 100. Yeah, so a 700 milliamps, that becomes 112 watts that you
Okay.
would need out of the
What,
driver.
spoon feed me again. What's the forward voltage on? I want to write it down so I'll have it for future questions. I know a lot of people will ask.
And I'll put that on the site within the next few days. But it's basically 160.2 volts
2 volts at
at
700
700
milliamps.
milliamps.
Okay.
At 350, if somebody is crazy and really does want to blow twice the money in order to get that extra boost, it's 100. Excuse me, it's 154.3 volts.
Okay. Gotcha.
So,
Okay. Well, the
so
way
but
obviously you have drivers, but the Meanwell 240 700 is like 357 volts. So I can run this thing that uses 320 and I could still have a little headroom if I wanted to add a product outside of your selection.
yeah, so
If I wanted.
let me add one more current level, which is the 1050 milliamp.
Whoa, you
And
can push them that hard?
in fact, all of the commercial ones, that's the voltage, all the amperes that I'm driving them at. The way that they're designed to be driven at 1050 milliamps. The reason to the constraint that we had with the believe it or not, and this is not me bragging, this is just what the lab told me. This lantern thing turned out to be the brightest thing they've ever tested at the lab ever. So, and even then we were using their ND4, which is like their strongest neutral density filter inside of their spectroradiometer.
Oh, like I
So
put on my camera to make the sun less bright? Neutral
exactly. So like
density?
sunglasses in front of the meter. So if we were to take this up to 1050 milliamps,
Mhm.
you would just saturate their instrument and would not be able to get a result.
Holy crap.
And so that's why we don't have a three driver version of this.
Okay.
But in reality, they were designed to be run at 1050 milliamps.
Okay.
So
And
at
what's the
1050
voltage up there?
milliamps, we're getting 164 and a half volts.
Okay, so nominal bump up doesn't really affect us much. Well, if
Let
you
me tell
look
you
at
how much efficiency you'll lose, because it's not
okay,
shown here, but I can tell you because I've tested it in my own spectroradiometer at home. I don't have a sphere, but I have a spectroradiometer, and knowing this information on, like on center, I can accurately, because my spectroradiometer isn't this calibrated just like their equipment, as long as I am testing on center at the 700 milliamp version and then bump it up to the 1050 milliamp version, the difference between the two is just as accurate as their information, basically.
sure.
So with the boost in extra amperage, we're only losing, let me see here. I have this big old thing and I have it written down. I'm just trying to find this exact spot where I have it written down.
Yeah, no problem. So we only have a 6% loss. Well, we only have a 6% gain in dropping down to the insane current of 350 milliamps, which would be a super expensive build. So that's totally acceptable. And then we go from 700 milliamps, which is running the board at, let's see, what,
750 milliamps, that's running at 112 watts, basically.
Okay, 112 watts. Gotcha. Okay, that's great. And then we go to 1050 milliamps. 05 times that voltage of 164 volts. Looks like 172 watts per board. Dope. Okay. 172 watts per board. That means I could use like, okay, continue. We'll talk about practical applications in the second chat. Chat's freaking out. They want to know how many over this space, blah, blah, blah.
Oh yeah, no, none of that stuff is going to be, I can't help you with that here yet. You know, once I haven't done any of those measurements. Okay. Once I do, a promise, I'll post it. And then if you want, we can do a video on it, or I'll do a video on it. But
sure.
At this point, as far as like figuring out how much you need for what area, you know, I can't, or like what kind of coverage each one will have. I can't answer that since I haven't measured it.
Because sphere numbers are great, but like there's no substitute for hanging a light up and seeing what you get in an actual space, right? So
right, exactly. So anyway, you're losing about 5.5% of efficiency from going to 1050 milliamps.
Okay, well that's totally acceptable in my mind. Like I'll take a 5%.
Absolutely.
Loss.
So that basically cuts the cost in half, right? So if you look at it, you know, you're only losing 5% of efficiency, but you're saving twice the money, right?
Right.
So each one of those points, you know, it's about a 5 or 6% loss or increase in efficiency, depending on the direction you go in. Mm-hmm. But the amount of money that you have to spend in order to acquire those boards increases or decreases by twofold in each step you go. So it does not make sense economically to try to get that extra 5%, you know, because you're blowing twice the money on it. You know, in my view, it doesn't make sense. So if you want, you could, but I wouldn't.
So Vitaly, I think we probably went about 3 times as long as we kind of talked about. I don't mean to cut you short, but I just think there's so much ground to cover that I think what we need to do is we need to, you know, wait on you to get some data, and then, you know, interpolate that data, come up with some PAR maps, come up with some practical application guides. Leave that carrot out on that stick. I'm sorry, people, we can't answer what's optimal for a 4x4 tent right now because we don't have the numbers. This is like an exclusive pre-release. Get your brain juices flowing, and that's what, you know, that's what's going on with me. And I'll probably come up with some computer-aided designs once I get your PAR maps based on frames, because I think people are going to want that perfect frame for that 4x4. But if the guys and gals that don't want to deal with DIY, you do have an expected release date on some full fixtures here. This is the one I'd buy. I like 600 watts at the kind of efficacy you're talking about. 600 watts. Man,
so if you want the results that you got out of my 650 that you own, what would I need to buy? You would need to buy the 400.
No,
I'm serious. No. Just do the math. 1.7 micromoles is what it was running at.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do, guys. We'll do some math, and we'll come back. And I just don't believe that because I'm a caveman, and I'm stuck in watts. I had a 650. You're telling me this 400 watt can do the job of my 650 watt?
This pretty much proves what we were saying earlier, is that wattage isn't really the only thing you should look at. Plus the price, right? Like when you look at the price.
Yeah, it's only a G.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant like micromoles per joule, based on basically micromoles per dollar, right? Is what you should figure instead of watts per dollar, because watts per dollar could mean if it's just 1 microjoule of efficiency, you know, and you spend $1,000, you're only getting 1 micromole per dollar. But if it's 2 microjoules per efficiency, right, and it's a 1,000 watt fixture and it costs you $1,000, now you're getting twice your money's worth for the same price. Even though if you were just to consider watts per watts, it's equal price, right? Okay. So that's why it's important to always consider the efficiency along with the wattage and the cost you know, to
Okay,
figure out
I'm
which makes best
stuck.
sense.
I need to see this. You gotta prove this to me. Okay, let me find a blank slide here. Okay, sorry chat. I just need to see this. I have to see it so I can understand it. Get rid of all this crap. Okay, we're gonna do this like this. So I had a light that was 650 watts, right?
Yeah.
And the efficacy on my old chilled LED was 1.7 micromoles per joule,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and then that's I believe that's a board level too. So you can use the board level data from that data sheet in order to
Let's
compare
stick at
apples to
board level
apples.
just because we have both of those data collections,
Right.
right? Okay, so I'm taking 650 watts. That's what it was when I plugged it into the wall at 1.7, and that's giving me 1105 umoles per second, right? Now, your new fixture at 400 watts, right?
Mhm.
And the efficacy board level, what was it, 2.87 or something?
No, that's at 350 milliamps, but we're talking
Oh,
1050 drive current. So
1,000. Okay,
it's 2.67.
2.67.
That's
Okay.
with the 6 pin that's coming up. Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be what's on the website. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I know that I know how it's supposed to work out, but I just need to see this because I thought, when I bought the damn thing, I was like, dude, 650 watt light, like that's pulling 2 pounds, like that's pretty fucking good. So we got 400 watts at the new efficacy of 2.67. That's giving me 1,068. So it's slightly under. Let's see, 1068 divided by 1105. So it's 96.7%. So
Yeah,
in the ballpark,
within
but
3.5%.
technically it's 3.4% less light, but I'm saving 150 frickin' watts to
Yeah.
get the same photon delivery.
Not to mention the expense of the light. You know, the 650
Okay,
or the
well,
600 watt light's more expensive.
shit. I mean, well, that's not even for sale anymore. But let's just do the math. Let's just do the math. We had an $1,800 fixture or 1,900
No, I
somewhere in there.
meant the next, like we have a 500 watt light and a 600 watt light. So if you were to go up to one of those, it would cost you more,
Sure.
in energy and in the acquisition price.
Oh, absolutely,
But the
absolutely.
400 would get you basically about the same result. In fact, it'll probably give you better results. And the reason I'm saying, even though it's 30.4% less output, and the reason I'm saying this is because it's got more deep red dominant spectrum combined with that gentle UV that we have on there will definitely produce a better yield for you. So
Okay, so
in the
if
end,
if
it'll
I would have paid full price off the website, obviously you gave me a discount because it was a used prototype. But on my old chilled LED 650 that I pulled 2 pounds off of, I paid $1. I would have paid $1.62 per micromole per second. On this new fixture, I'm looking at paying, and this is just fresh off the street. Like I don't need to be friends with you or have your phone number to get the price of 93 cents
right.
per micromole. So that's a serious reduction.
Yeah, about 70% decrease in cost.
Holy,
In
sorry,
acquisition,
an acquisition
plus,
cost.
and then with the 650 versus 400, that's a serious amount of energy savings over the time that you're going to running this thing too.
Sure. I mean, I'm saving a quarter kilowatt hour per hour times 12, right? Which is equal to I'm saving 3 kilowatts a day. Is that right? Why do I need a calculator? Yeah, I'm saving 3 kilowatt hours a day, 3 kilowatt hours per day. And you figure there's 12
Like
times 63 kilowatt hours in a cycle. Times 63, 756 kilowatt hours times 7. I don't know if this is really like that interesting of a live stream, but it's interesting to me. So let's do it. So we're saving 2,200 kilowatt hours, 2,250 kilowatt hours per cycle, assuming I can get the same result. And if we multiply that by a dollar amount of like, let's just say 25 cents, you know, kind of national sort of average, 25 cents. I know a lot of people are paying 15 cents, but
That's too high. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Probably close to, like you said, 15 or maybe even 12 cents.
okay, let's go 18 cents, because I think that's probably, I mean, that's what I pay, 18 cents a kilowatt hour. So
Oh, really? Well, here in Washington State, it's closer to like around 11 cents, I believe. I guess it depends. Some of the higher energy use states use different.
I messed up my math. Anyway, I'm gonna abort the math because I messed up the math. I think I actually added a 0. sorry. So 225 times 0.18. So I'm saving $40 per cycle. That's over a 63-day period, just on the savings alone between a 650 watt LED and a 400 watt LED.
Not to mention the AC savings, because you're 250 watts less of energy that you're dumping into the room.
I'm sold. Take my money.
But look at this. I know that we're going well over the time, and I don't know what the chat's thinking as far as the questions they're asking. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of saving energy, if we were to switch this around based on the information we talked in the beginning, which is increasing your yield by optimizing the CO2 concentration, the temperature, and the light,
sure,
you can replace that watt or that light watt for watt or close to it and get a higher yield while not spending any more on electricity.
Right.
As long as your CO2 and temperature is raised accordingly.
Thank you for pulling that all back in. So, GrowMouse silver bullet moment. You've just spent the last hour and 47 minutes with me and Vitaly from GrowLights.com. I'll have his link in the description of this video. He's got a new technology that's ready to hit the streets in about 5 weeks or something, maybe 5-6 weeks, right, Vitaly?
Yeah. As soon as we get the stuff.
It is it's a quantum leap, no pun intended, for LED grow lights and grow lights in general. And going off the information that we laid out at the beginning, you can either save 250 watts and do the job of a 650 watt pretty high-end LED, or bump up your CO2, adjust your temperature, adjust your environment, pack more photons for less watts in the same space, saving you time, saving you money, and creating potentially some of your biggest harvests per square foot, grams per square foot per space, over the same 8 or 9 week period.
Right. And then, if you don't mind, let me add one more thing.
No, go ahead.
So going from the savings of energy, the only savings that you're reaping, aside from the slight savings in the original purchase cost of the light, which is about $40, right, per cycle. So if you were to switch that around and get the same wattage light or something close to it, that additional yield, how much does the product that you're selling worth, right, per gram?
Right.
And
I'm not going to say, but
right, what would that be worth? So I have a feeling it'll be magnitudes higher than the $40 that you would be saving in energy. So it makes much better sense to replace the wattage watt for watt at a higher efficiency, provided you don't reach the limit of diminishing returns by adding the carbon and the temperature.
Exactly. Right. So continue.
Yeah, and at that point, that $40 per cycle could easily turn out to be $400+ per cycle, right? Because of the fact of depending on what it is that you're growing, that the price of the product could totally offset that in the other direction.
And that's also a metric that we'll have to explore when we start talking about HPS and things like that, which we kind of want to steer clear of. We kind of want to keep it general, just talk general and talk about the technology. But Vitaly, I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited because LEDs already feel like a cheat, like a hack, because you can just get more photon yield per watt. And I was very satisfied until today. And now you're telling me I can use less watts and achieve the same, or use the same watts that I'm very comfortable with and achieve more.
Yeah, much more potentially than by saving. Yeah, and then the very last thing, like when you build a light with one of these, I know you can sort of do the same thing with the cobs, but most cobs have a different, footprint and things like that. So the holes may not align and all that kind of stuff. But if you were to either buy a light or build a light with one of these modules, then the only thing that you would need to do is, like say a year down the road, there's a quantum leap in efficiency. And now we're using new chips, right? And new boards. The board's going to have the exact same shape and exact same hole pattern.
You're committing to that today?
I am. Absolutely. Okay. So the only thing that you need to do is remove the cover off of the board, remove the board, put the new board on, put the cover on, and all of a sudden you have a brand new light at the higher efficiency without having to change any of the other components.
So just like cobs, I mean, it's slightly more involved than cobs because there's more than 2 screws, but like I go through all the trouble to build one of my builds, and maybe I even come up with a cool water jet name for it, like the chill. I'm not going to say right now, and then you come up with this new board next year because it seems like you're on top of your research and finding out what the best stuff is. All I got to do is swap boards. So that maybe costs me like, I don't know, $600-700 as opposed to like thousands of dollars per light.
Right. And the time that you're wasting in building it, if you were to build it yourself. Yeah. Very
cool. Man, Vitaly, I'm excited. I think we should get together again in a few weeks or maybe close to the launch or something, and we talk a little bit more. I feel like we laid down a lot of baseline, but we weren't able to really explore the practical application. So I would love to do that because that's the number one question. What do I need for a 4x4? What do I need for a 5x5? So would you want to do something like that in the future?
I would. And in fact, I'll give you a little teaser. I don't know if I should, but I will. All right. So the testing that we're currently doing at the lab with my lights and quite a few competitor lights. And we're not doing sphere tests, which only capture the total combined integrated light, right? We're doing basically goniometer measurements, which basically considers all of the angles at which each particular light, ray strikes the sensor, and combining that into a file. And then we're building a special tool for our site that'll be available free of charge, no matter the kind of light you want. As long as we've tested the light, even if it's a competitor product, you can pull it down from the list, punch in the dimensions of your room, punch in the height you want, mess around with the spacings, with the heights, and it'll spit out a visual graph of what the spectrum, or basically what the evenness of coverage will be, and what the PPFD would be at any point. So you can design your room without ever buying a light or asking me or guesstimating what it would be.
So I can go on in the future, I'll be able to go on your website as a non-customer of yours, select products that you've tested independently that have been shipped to a lab that you've never touched or altered, drop down that guy's light into your tool and design my whole room inside your tool for free?
Yeah, absolutely. And so far we've tested testing like 12 of them, but I have a goal of testing 100 lights by the end of the year. So if any one of you guys are planning on buying a light other than my light, buy it, but don't send it to yourself. Have it sent to my lab. I'll pay for the testing, and it'll be included in that calculator.
So if I wanted, let's say I was going to buy light C or something like that, I'd buy it. I'd email you, and you'd give me the address to your lab or the lab you're working with, the independent lab. I'd ship it there, and you'll pay for the testing, and then I'll get my light back with a free, I don't know how much the reports cost, but.
Well, the report will be posted on the site, and you can. And once the tool's there, they'll be able to use it. Yeah, absolutely. And they'll only they only have it on for maybe an hour maximum.
Oh yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So they don't even have to email me. Just look on their site, see if that's been tested yet. If it has not, just drop ship it to them. No questions asked. You don't need my permission or anything like that, and they'll test it out, and I'll make sure to get that added in.
Wow. So if I ordered a light today. Let's say I pulled out my credit card right now. When do you think I get my light?
A light you would get back?
If I went on your website and bought one of your Gen 2, the 400 watt we were talking about, it says here April 28th is the release date. You think we're looking pretty close to that if I pre-ordered today? I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't want you to overpromise, underdeliver.
I'm actually trying to do the opposite of. I'm trying to kind of extend it out a bit and give some room, so that way in case something does go wrong. But it's possible something might go even worse than I think it may. But you never know. Right, we're at the mercy of the manufacturers of the chips. We have most of them, including the ones that are hardest to find, which is those Samsung S6s. I had them on order since last year. Yeah, but as soon as we get those, then we can build the boards and have the lights made. It's just all dependent on when the manufacturer finally sends us the parts.
Cool. So, obviously you're accepting pre-orders, and if everything goes great, you might be up and growing in early May. It looks like, depending on how many orders come in and stuff, and if things don't, if there's a hang up, it might be a couple more weeks or something.
Yeah, no pre-orders. I know it says that there now, but if you try it, it won't work. Wait until I send the newsletter announcement, because I don't want people to buy something that it's not spec'd out completely. Because I want to have them in the information so they make an educated decision to make a purchase, and it's a light that they would actually need instead of just willy-nilly buying one without any specs shown on the site.
I can respect that. So you're not accepting people's money until you're ready to accept people's money.
Right. Until we have all the information up.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you heard it here, folks, guys. There's definitely something to be excited about coming here in 2017. And chilledgrowlights.com is a place you're going to want to go check out. It's linked in the description of this video. They do have a newsletter that you can sign up so you can get some email updates. I'm on it, and I bet you a couple hundred people will hop on it. And the prices are looking good for the full fixtures, very fair. And you're offering us some DIY components for us folks that are we're living paycheck to paycheck, trying to build a light over the course of 2 or 3 months. So
yeah, anything that goes into our light is going to be available as the DIY component. So
very cool, man.
Do what you want.
Very cool. Well, Vitaly, thank you so much for sharing your Sunday morning / afternoon with us now. We really appreciate it. For Vitaly and me, Grow Mouse, thanks for sticking with us, guys. Thank you, chat. You guys are holding it down strong. As I get more information from Vitaly and buy some test modules and stuff like that, there'll be more coverage right here on my channel. So be sure to like the video, subscribe, and I'll have Vitaly back on.
Oh, last thing. I know I keep saying that. That clear thing that I made, you got to figure out how you want to do the little giveaway thing for that. Okay, yeah.
This will be a reward for the people at the very last minute. If you watch this video to the last minute, go. You know what? I'm not even going to tell you. Go to Vitaly's channel. Okay, go watch his last video. It's only a few minutes. He built this badass little air ducted cooled module, and he's going to be giving it away. And what are we doing, Vitaly? You want me to do a little video on it and give it away here, or are you going to give it away there and I choose the winner? Or
no, you don't need to. You don't need to do a video. Just do whatever you do to select the winner. Tell me who it is, and I'll send it to him.
Oh, perfect. So I guess I'll brainstorm a contest. So you might come away from this live stream with a winning prize. So yeah, we'll kick that off, and we'll get like literally the first light in somebody's hands. Like if we did the giveaway, it'd be ready to go.
It is. I have it built. It's sitting right there. And plus, the bonus is it's running at 700 milliamps since I didn't have a 1050 milliamp driver. So they're actually getting that 1.7 milliamp, micromole per joule efficiency out of it.
The 2.7.
2.7. Excuse me. Yes.
Right. Dope. So, wow. So we're gonna give away the very first freaking one. Holy shit!
Well, someone's gonna have the most efficient light out there right now.
Oh my God. Mods, friends of the channel, let's discuss this on Instagram, how we're going to give this damn thing away, because I want to reward the people that are, that are right here in this chat. Vitaly, these are your supporters. These are my supporters. So, it's at the end of the video. I'm not going to write anything about it. I want it to go to one of you guys, so we'll figure this out. You guys that know me, hit me up on Instagram, man. We'll hook you up with the world first chilled grow light Gen Deuce. Thanks, guys.
Too. It's clear.
And it's clear. It's clear. All right. We're out of here. For me and Vitaly, we'll see you on the next stream. Take care, guys.
Thank you, guys.